This is a massive story designed to keep viewer retention high for YouTube, given they say love is blind. But in the world of the ultra-rich, love is just a transaction waiting to expire. You think you know betrayal? Wait until you hear the story of Lakota Sterling. 1 minute, she was the pampered wife of a tech mogul, pregnant and waiting for her anniversary dinner. The next, she was thrown onto the cold streets of New York City with nothing but the clothes on her back. But her husband, Marcus, made one fatal calculation. He didn't know who Lakota really was. He didn't know that the woman he called worthless was the sole heiress to a dynasty that makes his millions look like pocket change. This is the story of the most brutal betrayal and the most satisfying karma in history. Buckle up. The penthouse on the 43rd floor of the 157 building in Manhattan was silent, save for the hum of the climate control and the soft ticking of a grandfather clock. Outside, the New York skyline glittered like a sea of diamonds, indifferent to the woman pacing the marble floors inside. Lakota Sterling smoothed her hands over her swelling stomach. She was 7 months pregnant, her ankles were swollen, and her back ached. But tonight, she had ignored the pain. She had spent the entire afternoon preparing. The table was set with their wedding china, fine porcelain from Bergdorf Goodman, and a bottle of 1995 Chateau Margaux was breathing on the sidebar. It was their 3rd anniversary. Lakota looked at the clock. 9:15 p.m. Marcus was late. Again. He's just busy, she whispered to herself, adjusting the strap of her modest silk dress. Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, was the golden boy of the tech world. He had just closed a deal with the Department of Defense, worth $200 million. He was under pressure. She had to be understanding. That was her role. The quiet, supportive wife who came from nothing and should be grateful for everything. The sound of the biometric lock engaging made her heart jump. The heavy oak doors swung open. "Marcus!" Lakota smiled, waddling slightly as she moved to greet him. "Happy anniversary, darling. I made your favor." She stopped dead. Marcus wasn't alone. Walking in beside him, her arm draped possessively through his, was Jessica Thorne. Jessica was Marcus's personal assistant, a striking woman with razor-sharp cheekbones, platinum blonde hair, and a reputation for ruthlessness that rivaled Marcus's own. Jessica was wearing a white dress. It looked suspiciously like a wedding gown, though cut short and revealing. "Hello, Lakota," Jessica purred, her eyes scanning Lakota's pregnant form with undisguised disgust. "You look rotund." Lakota looked from Jessica to Marcus. Marcus looked impeccable in his bespoke Tom Ford suit, but his face was cold, devoid of emotion. He didn't look at the dinner table. He didn't look at the candles. He didn't look at his wife. "Marcus," Lakota's voice trembled. "What is she doing here? It's our anniversary." Marcus sighed, pulling a sleek, leather-bound folder from his briefcase. He tossed it onto the hallway table. It slid across the marble and stopped at Lakota's feet. "It is an anniversary, yes," Marcus said, his voice smooth and detached. "The anniversary of the day I realized I could do better. Pick it up, Lakota." Lakota's hands shook as she reached down. She opened the folder. Bold letters at the top read, "Notice of divorce and eviction." "What? What is this?" Lakota gasped. The room began to spin. "Marcus, I'm pregnant. We're having a son." "Correction," Jessica interrupted, stepping forward and resting a manicured hand on Marcus's chest. "You are having a burden. Marcus is entering his prime. Sterling Dynamics is about to go public on the NYSE. The board thinks he needs an image update. A frumpy, charity case wife from the Midwest doesn't fit the brand anymore. He needs a power couple dynamic." "I'm divorcing you, Lakota," Marcus stated flatly. Jessica and I have been together for 6 months. She understands the business. She understands me. You? You were a placeholder. A charity project I picked up because I thought you'd be grateful and obedient. But frankly, you're boring. Boring! Lakota screamed, tears finally spilling over. I gave up my career for you. I cut off my friends because you said they were low class. I am carrying your child, Marcus laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. And don't think you're getting a payout. Read page 4, the prenuptial agreement. If the marriage ends before 5 years, you get nothing. Absolutely nothing. As for the kid, I'll pay the state-mandated minimum support, but I want 0 custody. I don't need a crying brat ruining my sleep. Lakota felt like she had been punched in the gut. You can't do this. I have nowhere to go. My parents are gone. I have no savings. That sounds like a you problem, Jessica sneered. She walked over to the dining table, picked up the glass of Chateau Margaux meant for Lakota, and took a sip. A bit oaky. Marcus, call security. You have 10 minutes to pack a bag, Marcus said, checking his Patek Philippe watch. If you're not out, the building security will remove you, and they aren't gentle. Marcus, please! Lakota fell to her knees, grabbing the hem of his jacket. It's raining outside. It's November. I have no money. Just let me stay in the guest room until the baby comes. Please. Marcus looked down at her with pure contempt. He kicked his leg out, shaking her off. You're wrinkling the suit, Lakota. 10 minutes. He turned his back on her and walked into the living room, pulling Jessica into a passionate kiss, right in front of the anniversary dinner Lakota had spent all day cooking. Lakota scrambled to the bedroom, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. She grabbed a duffel bag and shoved in what she could. Some warm clothes, her prenatal vitamins, a photo of her late mother, and her phone. Exactly 9 minutes later, 2 burly security guards appeared at the door. They didn't speak. They simply grabbed her by the arms and escorted her to the freight elevator, as if she were trash being taken to the dumpster. As the elevator doors closed, the last thing she heard was Jessica's laughter, echoing down the hallway. The automatic doors of the 157 building slid open, and the cold November wind hit Lakota like a physical blow. It was pouring rain. The streets of Manhattan were slick with oil and water, reflecting of the neon lights of a city that didn't care about her. She stumbled onto 57th Street, clutching her duffel bag to her chest to shield her belly. She was soaked through in seconds. Passers-by in expensive trench coats hurried past, averting their eyes. In New York, misery is invisible. Lakota checked her phone. 14% battery. She opened her banking app. Balance, $42.50. Marcus had drained the joint account. He had cancelled her credit cards. She had checked them in the elevator. All of them showed card suspended. She walked toward a subway station, seeking shelter. The smell of stale urine and damp concrete filled her nose, making her nauseous. She sat on a wooden bench, shivering violently. Her teeth chattered. "Mommy's sorry," she whispered to her stomach. "I'm so sorry." She needed a plan. She needed a lawyer. But lawyers cost money. She called her old friend, Sarah, whom she hadn't spoken to in 2 years because Marcus didn't like her. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She tried her aunt in Ohio. No answer. Hours passed. The station began to empty out. A group of rowdy teenagers walked by, kicking her bag. "Move it, lady!" one yelled. Fear spiked in her chest. She couldn't stay here. It wasn't safe. She hauled herself up and walked back up to the street level. She found a 24-hour diner on 8th Avenue. Maybe she could buy a tea and sit there for a few hours. She sat in a booth, dripping wet. The waitress, a tired woman named Barb, looked at her with pity. "Honey, you look like hell. Coffee?" Herbal tea, please. I'm pregnant, Lakota whispered. She drank the tea, the warmth spreading through her frozen limbs. But as she went to pay, her debit card was declined. The $42.50 was gone. Marcus must have frozen that too in the last hour. I can't pay, Lakota stammered, tears mixing with the rain on her face. My husband, he took everything. The manager, a stout man with a grease-stained shirt, walked over. No money? Get out. We aren't a shelter. Please just let me stay inside. It's freezing. Out! Lakota was pushed back out into the rain. The despair was absolute now. She walked aimlessly, her legs heavy as lead. She found herself near Central Park. The trees offered some shelter from the wind. She found a dry patch of dirt under a stone bridge and curled up, pulling her coat tight over her belly. This was it. She was going to die here. Her baby was going to die here. As she drifted into a feverish sleep, her hand brushed against the lining of her duffel bag. She felt a piece of paper. Not the divorce papers. Something thicker. She pulled it out. It was an old, sealed envelope her mother had given her on her deathbed 5 years ago. Open this only when you have nowhere else to turn, Ellie. When the world has taken everything from you. Lakota had forgotten about it. She had been so happy with Marcus, she thought she'd never need it. She assumed it was just a sentimental letter or a small savings bond. With trembling fingers, she tore open the wax seal. Inside was a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored paper with a golden crest at the top. The Blackwood Family Trust. The letter was short. My dearest Lakota, if you are reading this, I have failed to protect you from the truth. I was not just a librarian from Ohio. My name was scandalous once, so I changed it to protect you. Your father did not die in a car crash. Your father is Silas Blackwood. I ran away because his world is dangerous, cutthroat, and cruel. I wanted you to have a simple life. But if you are reading this, the simple life has failed you. You are the sole heir to the Blackwood fortune. Go to him. Show him this ring. Lakota tipped the envelope. A heavy signet ring made of black onyx and gold fell into her palm. It bore the crest of a roaring lion, the symbol of Blackwood Global, the largest private equity firm in the world. Silas Blackwood was a man worth an estimated $80 billion. He was known as the Iron Wolf of Wall Street. Lakota stared at the ring. She wasn't just a discarded wife. She was a Blackwood. But right now, she was just a homeless woman with a fever. Her vision blurred. The stress, the cold, and the shock were too much. She tried to stand up, but her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the wet pavement, the ring clutched tightly in her fist. The last thing she saw was a pair of headlights blinding her, and a sleek black Bentley screeching to a halt. A man in a chauffeur's uniform ran toward her, shouting into a radio. "Sir, we found a woman. She's unconscious. My God, sir, she's wearing the onyx ring." Everything went black. Lakota woke up to the smell of antiseptic and expensive lilies. She wasn't on the street. She was in a bed that felt like a cloud. She blinked her eyes open. The room was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River. But this wasn't a normal hospital room. It was a private medical suite. The walls were mahogany, and a Renoir painting hung opposite her bed. "She's awake." The voice was deep, gravelly, and commanded instant authority. Lakota turned her head. Sitting in a leather wingback chair was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He had silver hair, piercing blue eyes, and was dressed in a three-piece charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's car. It was Silas Blackwood, the man she had seen on the cover of Forbes and Time magazine, the man everyone feared. Where am I?" Lakota croaked. Her throat was dry. "You are in the Blackwood private wing at Mount Sinai," Silas said. He stood up, leaning on a cane topped with a silver wolf's head. He walked to the bedside, his eyes scanning her face with an intensity that made her shrink back. "And you have a lot of explaining to do, child." He held up the onyx ring. "This ring belonged to my son, Julian. He disappeared 30 years ago with a woman named Sarah Vance. Are you her daughter?" "Sarah was my mother," Lakota whispered, tears welling up again. "She died 5 years ago. She gave me the letter. She said you were my grandfather." Silas's expression didn't change, but his grip on the cane tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Julian, my boy." He looked at Lakota again. "We ran a DNA test while you were unconscious. It was a match. You are of my blood." He sat down on the edge of the bed, his icy demeanor cracking just slightly. "I have spent billions trying to find Julian, and instead I find his daughter, half dead in a gutter in Central Park." His face hardened again, the sorrow replaced by a terrifying rage. "Who did this to you? Who put a Blackwood on the street?" Lakota hesitated. She felt shame. "My husband, Marcus Sterling." Silas's eyes narrowed. "Sterling? The boy who runs that toy company, Sterling Dynamics? I know him. He's been begging for a meeting with my firm for months. He wants capital to expand into Asia." Lakota nodded, looking down at her hands. He threw me out. For his mistress. He said I was boring. He said I was worthless because I came from nothing. He left me and his unborn child in the rain." The room went silent. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Silas Blackwood stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the city he practically owned. "He called you worthless," Silas repeated softly. "He threw my great-grandson out in the rain." Silas pressed a button on the intercom on the wall. "Edwards?" "Yes, Mr. Blackwood," a crisp voice answered. "Initiate Protocol 0. I want everything on Marcus Sterling. His debts, his assets, his secrets, his mistress. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and who he cheats on his taxes with. And get the legal team. We are going to restructure the family trust." He turned back to Lakota. A small, dark smile played on his lips. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found prey. "Rest, Lakota. You and the baby are safe now. You are a Blackwood, and Blackwoods do not cry over men like Marcus Sterling." "What are we going to do?" Lakota asked, feeling a strange spark of anger igniting in her chest, fueled by her grandfather's power. "We?" Silas chuckled. "I am going to teach you how to be a queen. And then we are going to burn his kingdom to the ground." For the first month at the Blackwood estate in the Hamptons, Lakota did nothing but cry. She cried for the husband she lost, for the life she thought she had, and for the fear of raising a child alone. Silas Blackwood watched her from the doorway of the nursery, his cane tapping rhythmically on the floor. "You are mourning a ghost," Silas said one afternoon, watching Lakota stare out at the grey Atlantic Ocean. "The man you loved never existed. Marcus Sterling is a parasite. And you are currently food for parasites." "I can't just turn off my feelings, grandfather," Lakota snapped, her hormones and grief making her bold. "I'm not a robot like you." Silas didn't get angry. He smiled. "Good. There is fire in there. But fire without direction just burns the house down. We need to forge you into a weapon." The training began 2 weeks after Lakota gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she named Leo. Leo had his mother's eyes, but the Blackwood chin, stubborn and strong. The Lakota Sterling who baked cookies and apologized for existing died the day she stepped into Silas's private library. Year 1. The foundation. Silas hired the best tutors money could buy, not just for business, but for presence. Lakota spent mornings studying macroeconomics and corporate law with professors from Wharton. She learned how to read a balance sheet until her eyes blurred. She learned how to spot a shell company, how to hide assets, and how to execute a hostile takeover. Business is war without bullets, Silas told her during a lesson on leverage buyouts. Marcus used a prenuptial agreement to disarm you. You will use contracts to strangle him. But the afternoon sessions were harder. Silas brought in a retired MI6 agent to teach her body language. Lakota learned how to detect a lie by the twitch of an eyelid. She learned how to walk into a room and suck the oxygen out of it just by standing still. She took voice lessons to lower her pitch, removing the frantic, high-pitched tone of a pleaser and replacing it with the smooth, velvet baritone of a ruler. Year 2. The exterior. They moved to Paris. Leo was walking now, a happy toddler surrounded by nannies, but Lakota was working harder than ever. She changed her look completely. The mousy brown hair was dyed a rich, dark chocolate and cut into a sharp, angular bob. She started a grueling fitness regime, Pilates and kickboxing, shredding the rotund body Jessica had mocked and replacing it with lean, dangerous muscle. She learned French, Italian, and Mandarin. She learned to appreciate wine, not just for the taste, but for the leverage it gave in social situations. One evening, while dining at a Michelin star restaurant in Paris, a man bumped into her and spilled wine on her dress. The old Lakota would have apologized. The new Lakota didn't move. She simply looked at the man, raised a single eyebrow, and waited. The silence stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. The man, a wealthy banker, began to sweat. I'm so sorry, madame," he stammered. "You are clumsy," Lakota said, her voice cool as ice. "See that it doesn't happen again." Silas, watching from across the table, nodded. She was ready. Year 3. The target Lakota returned to the New York estate. She was now 29, but she looked ageless. She was no longer Lakota Sterling. Legally, she had changed her name to Eleanor Blackwood. One night, Silas called her into his study. A large screen on the wall was playing a news segment. It was Marcus. He looked older, more tired, but richer. Sterling Dynamics had gone public. He was a billionaire on paper. Standing next to him was Jessica. She was dripping in diamonds, but her smile looked strained. The headline read, "Sterling Dynamics faces lawsuit over patent infringement." "He's vulnerable," Silas said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. "His stock is wobbling. He's over-leveraged. He borrowed heavily to buy a competitor, and now he's cash poor. He needs an investor." Lakota took the glass. She swirled the amber liquid, watching the light catch the heavy onyx ring she now wore on her right hand. "He doesn't need an investor," Lakota corrected him, a cruel smile touching her lips. "He needs a savior. And I'm going to be the angel of death." "How do you want to play this?" Silas asked. "I want to buy his debt," Lakota said. "I want to own the bank that owns him. And then I want to invite him to the slaughter." Silas clinked his glass against hers. "Welcome to the family business, Eleanor. The Met Gala is the battleground of New York's elite. It is where alliances are forged and social standings are cemented. This year's theme was Gilded Glamour, a fitting backdrop for greed. Marcus Sterling adjusted his bow tie, grimacing at his reflection in the limousine window. "Stop fidgeting," Jessica snapped. She was wearing a custom gold dress that was too tight, her face pulled taut by recent Botox injections. "We need to look happy. The share price dropped another 4% today. If the rumors spread that our marriage is in trouble, the board will panic." "The marriage is in trouble, Jessica," Marcus hissed. You spent $300,000 on a vacation to the Maldives while I was trying to stop the SEC from auditing us. Don't start with me, she glared. I made you. Without me, you'd still be with that dowdy cow, Lakota. At the mention of Lakota, Marcus fell silent. He hadn't thought of her in years. He assumed she had moved back to Ohio or found some low-wage job. He felt a twinge of something. Not guilt, but annoyance. She was a loose end. The limo stopped. The flashbulbs erupted like lightning. They walked the red carpet, pasting fake smiles on their faces. Reporters shouted questions. Marcus, is it true Sterling Dynamics is seeking a bailout? Jessica, who are you wearing? They reached the top of the stairs and were about to enter the museum when a hush fell over the crowd. It started at the street level, a sudden silence, followed by a roar of camera shutters that was twice as loud as before. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom had pulled up. The door opened. First came the shoe, a stiletto heel sharp enough to kill. Then, the dress. It was a masterpiece of midnight blue velvet embroidered with real black diamonds that shimmered like the night sky. A woman stepped out. She was tall, regal, and terrifyingly beautiful. She wore a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that looked like it belonged in the crown jewels. Her dark hair was slicked back, revealing a face of striking, aristocratic beauty. Walking beside her was Silas Blackwood. The reporters went feral. Silas Blackwood hadn't been seen at a public event in a decade. Mr. Blackwood, over here! Who is she? Who is the woman? Silas offered his arm to the woman. They walked up the stairs, bypassing the minor celebrities. Marcus and Jessica were blocked by security to let the Blackwoods pass. As they glided by, the woman turned her head. Her eyes, cold, dark, and intelligent, locked on to Marcus. Marcus froze. The breath left his lungs. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. But it was impossible. Lakota was soft, round, weak. This woman was a statue of war goddess. Who is that? Jessica whispered, her jealousy flaring instantly. Is that Silas Blackwood's new mistress? A reporter nearby answered, reading from his phone. No, that's his granddaughter, the newly announced heir, Eleanor Blackwood. Granddaughter? Marcus muttered, his brain misfiring. I didn't know he had one. Inside the gala, the atmosphere was electric. Everyone wanted to meet Eleanor. She moved through the room like a shark in a koi pond, speaking fluent French to the ambassador and laughing at the mayor's jokes. Marcus watched her from the bar, downing his third martini. He had to know. He felt a magnetic pull, a mix of curiosity and dread. He grabbed Jessica's arm. Come on, we're going to introduce ourselves. Blackwood Capital is the only firm with enough liquidity to save my company. If I can charm the granddaughter, we're saved. She looks like a bitch, Jessica muttered, but she followed. They approached the circle surrounding Eleanor. Marcus cleared his throat, putting on his best CEO charm. Mr. Blackwood, an honor to see you again. Silas turned, his face a mask of stone. Sterling. And this must be your granddaughter. Marcus turned his dazzle onto Lakota. I don't believe we've met. I'm Marcus Sterling. Lakota turned slowly. She looked at Marcus's outstretched hand, then up at his face. She didn't take the hand. Mr. Sterling, she said. Her voice was unrecognizable, lower, polished, mid-Atlantic accent. I've heard so much about you. Your company makes toys, correct? Jessica bristled. We make advanced defense robotics. Lakota's eyes slid to Jessica. She looked her up and down, a faint smirk playing on her lips. Ah, and you must be the assistant. I see you've been promoted. Jessica turned purple. I am his wife. My apologies, Lakota said, sounding utterly unapologetic. It's hard to keep track of the turnover in Mr. Sterling's life. Marcus felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. There was something in her tone, a hidden dagger. "Have we met?" Marcus asked, stepping closer, squinting at her. "You look incredibly familiar." Lakota stepped into his personal space. She smelled of oud wood and danger. She leaned close to his ear, her lips brushing his skin. "I just have one of those faces, Marcus," she whispered. "The kind you forget until it's too late." She pulled back and smiled, a dazzling, predatory smile. "Grandfather, I'm bored. Let's find better champagne. This area smells of desperation." She walked away, leaving Marcus standing there, shaking. "Did you hear that?" Marcus whispered to Jessica. "She knows me." "She's just an arrogant trust fund brat," Jessica spat. "Forget her." "I can't," Marcus said, watching Eleanor Blackwood disappear into the crowd. "Because if I can get her to invest, I win everything. And I think she wants to play." He had no idea that the game was rigged. 3 days after the gala, the hammer dropped. Sterling Dynamics stock plummeted 18% in a single morning. A supplier in Taiwan had suddenly pulled out of a critical contract, citing unforeseen legal complications. Without the microchips, Marcus couldn't fulfill the Department of Defense contract. If he missed the deadline, the penalty clauses would bankrupt him. Marcus was in his office, screaming into the phone. "Find me another supplier. I don't care about the cost." His CFO walked in, looking pale. "Marcus, we can't afford it. Our credit lines are maxed out. The banks are calling in the loans. We have 48 hours before we are insolvent." Marcus sank into his chair, head in his hands. "There has to be a way out." The intercom buzzed. "Sir, there is a call on line 1. It's the office of Eleanor Blackwood." Marcus's head snapped up. "Put it through, immediately." He smoothed his hair, trying to sound calm. "Ms. Blackwood, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Mr. Sterling," Lakota's cool voice filled the room. "My analysts tell me you're having a bit of a supply chain issue. It seems unfortunate." "A minor hiccup," Marcus lied. "It looks like a fatal hemorrhage from where I'm sitting," she countered. "But luckily for you, Blackwood Global has recently acquired a microchip facility in Taiwan. The very one that just cancelled your contract, actually." Marcus went cold. You bought the supplier?" "Business is dynamic, Marcus. We saw an asset. We acquired it. Now, I understand you need chips. I have them. I am willing to offer you a lifeline." "Name your price," Marcus said, desperate. "Not over the phone," Lakota said. "Come to the Blackwood Tower tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring your wife. We need all shareholders present. And Marcus, don't be late." The line went dead. Marcus sat there, stunned. It was a miracle. She was going to save him. The next morning, Marcus and Jessica stood in the lobby of Blackwood Tower. It was a fortress of glass and steel. They were escorted to the top floor, into a boardroom that felt more like a throne room. At the head of the long table sat Lakota. She was wearing a white power suit that cost more than Jessica's car. Silas was nowhere to be seen. She was doing this alone. "Sit," she commanded, not looking up from a file she was reading. Marcus and Jessica sat. Jessica looked nervous. The air in the room was suffocating. "You need $50 million in bridge financing and the supply contract reinstated," Lakota said, closing the file. "I am prepared to give you 100 million. Marcus's eyes widened. 100. That would solve everything. That would make us profitable again. However," Lakota continued, "the terms are strict. In exchange for the capital, Blackwood Global takes a 51% controlling interest in Sterling Dynamics. I become the chairwoman of the board. You remain CEO, but you answer to me. Every decision, every expense, Every hire goes through me. "That's a hostile takeover," Jessica shouted. "You're stealing his company." "I'm saving his company," Lakota said calmly. "Without me, you file for Chapter 11 by Friday. Do you want to be a bankrupt CEO, Marcus, or a rich puppet?" Marcus looked at Jessica, then at Lakota. He loved power, but he loved money more. "I'll sign," Marcus said. "Good." Lakota slid the massive contract across the table. "There is one more condition, a personal one." "What?" Marcus asked, pen hovering over the paper. Lakota leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "The 43rd floor penthouse at 157, the one you currently reside in. It's part of the collateral. You have to vacate it. I need a place to stay in the city, and I've always liked that building." Marcus paled. "That's my home." "It's an asset," Lakota shrugged, "and frankly, I think it has bad energy. I plan to gut it, renovate it, remove the stain of previous occupants." "Fine," Marcus gritted his teeth. "We have other properties. I'll sign." He signed the papers. Jessica signed as a witness, fuming. "Excellent," Lakota smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who had just clamped its jaws around the throat of a deer. "The funds will be transferred within the hour." "Oh, and Marcus?" "Yes." He stood up to leave, eager to get out of her presence. "Since I am now your boss, I expect a full audit of your personal expenses charged to the company account. I noticed a lot of jewelry purchases. If I find any embezzlement, I will have you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Marcus froze. He had been funneling company money to pay for Jessica's gambling debts for months. You wouldn't," he stammered. "Try me," Lakota said. She stood up and walked to the window, turning her back on him. "Get out of my office. You have a company to run. For me." As the door closed behind them, Lakota let out a long breath. She touched the onyx ring. Step 1 was complete. She owned him. Now, for step 2, the humiliation. She picked up her phone and dialed a private investigator. "It's Eleanor. Release the photos of Jessica and the pool boy to the tabloids. Tonight." The end of Marcus Sterling's reign didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened in the silence of an empty house. It had been 21 days since Eleanor Blackwood, the woman he now knew held his leash, had taken controlling interest in his company. In those 3 weeks, Marcus had aged 10 years. The public humiliation had been relentless. The photos of Jessica with her personal trainer were just the start. Then came the leaks about the toxic workplace culture at Sterling Dynamics. Then, the anonymous tips to the IRS regarding offshore accounts. Marcus sat in his home office in the Hamptons, a room that used to feel like a sanctuary of power. Now it felt like a prison cell. The mahogany desk was covered in final demand notices. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, his hand trembling so violently the bottle clinked against the glass. He drank it neat, the burn doing nothing to numb the panic clawing at his throat. The front door slammed downstairs. "Jessica!" he called out, his voice hoarse. He heard the click-clack of heels on the hardwood, fast and angry. He stumbled to the landing just in time to see his wife, the woman he had destroyed his first marriage for, dragging 2 Louis Vuitton steamer trunks toward the door. "Where are you going?" Marcus demanded, gripping the banister. Jessica stopped and looked up. Her face was devoid of the manufactured adoration she had worn for years. It was cold, hard, and disgusted. "I'm leaving, Marcus," she spat. "I spoke to a lawyer this morning. You're toxic. The SEC is going to indict you. The FBI is sniffing around the Cayman accounts. Do you think I'm going to stick around and wait for them to seize my jewelry?" "You spent that money," Marcus screamed, stumbling down the stairs. "Those accounts were for your debts, your gambling." "Prove it," she smirked, pulling on her leather gloves. My name isn't on any of the paperwork. You were always so arrogant, thinking you were the smartest man in the room. You signed everything yourself." She opened the door. The wind howled outside, carrying the scent of impending rain. "Jessica, please!" Marcus's voice broke, reducing him to a beg. "I have no one else. You can't leave me when I'm down. We're partners." "We were a transaction, Marcus," she said, stepping out into the grey afternoon. "And your credit just declined." The door slammed shut, echoing like a gunshot through the empty mansion. The summons. 2 hours later, his phone buzzed. It sat on the floor where he had thrown it. He stared at the screen. It was a single text message from the number saved as Office of the Chairwoman. 157 Penthouse, 8:07 p.m. "Attendance is mandatory. We need to discuss the terms of your surrender." Surrender? The word hung in the air. Marcus felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe this was it. Maybe Eleanor Blackwood was going to offer him a golden parachute, a few $1,000,000 to walk away quietly, so she could rebrand the company without his tainted name. He could take the money, find Jessica, win her back, and move to Monaco. He showered, shaved, and put on his best suit, a charcoal Armani that he had bought for the IPO launch. He needed to look like a winner, even if he felt like a corpse. The drive into Manhattan was a blur of rain and neon lights. He arrived at the 157 building at 7:55 p.m. The doorman, a new guy who didn't recognize him, asked for ID. It was a final, petty humiliation. This used to be his building. He rode the elevator up to the 43rd floor. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm of hope and terror. Ding. The doors slid open. Marcus stepped out and stopped dead. The penthouse was unrecognizable. The walls he had painted cream were now a slate grey. The gaudy gold chandeliers Jessica had insisted on were gone, replaced by sleek, industrial lighting. The furniture was sparse, sharp, and intimidating. The air smelled of expensive lilies and ozone. It wasn't a home. It was a fortress, standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, silhouetted against the stormy New York skyline, was a figure. "You're on time," the voice said. It was smooth, dark, and utterly commanding. "Miss Blackwood," Marcus said, clearing his throat. He tried to stride into the room with confidence, but the vast, cold space made him feel small. "I appreciate you meeting me personally. I think we can come to a mutual agreement regarding my severance package." The woman turned. She was wearing a gown of deep crimson silk, the color of fresh blood. It pooled around her feet and clung to her waist. Her hair was slicked back, sharp as a blade. But it was her face that froze the blood in Marcus's veins. She wasn't looking at him with the professional detachment of a business rival. She was looking at him with a personal, searing intensity that felt like a physical burn. "Severance," she repeated, tasting the word. She walked to a small side table and poured a glass of red wine. "That is an interesting choice of words, Marcus. To sever. To cut off." She turned to face him fully, the glass in her hand. "Like you severed your ties to your wife 3 years ago? Or how you severed your relationship with your unborn son?" Marcus blinked, confused. I don't discuss my personal life, Ms. Blackwood. I am here to talk business." "This isn't business, Marcus," she whispered, taking a step closer. The heels of her shoes clicked on the black marble, a sound that triggered a buried memory in Marcus's brain. Click, click, click. "It's raining tonight," she continued, her eyes drifting to the window. "A cold November rain. Do you remember the last time it rained like this? You were sitting right there, at that dining table. You were eating a steak, and a woman was on her knees, begging you for shelter." Marcus felt the room spin. The air grew thin. How do you know that? He stammered. Who told you that? She told you she had nowhere to go, the woman continued, her voice rising, shedding the polished accent, becoming raw and terrifyingly familiar. She told you she was 7 months pregnant, and you told her she was boring. You told her she was a placeholder. Marcus took a step back, his legs hitting the edge of a leather sofa. He looked at her. He really looked at her. Beneath the contour, beneath the designer clothes, beneath the cold armor of wealth. He saw the shape of her eyes. He saw the way her hands curled when she was angry. No, Marcus whispered. The word came out as a squeak. It's not possible. You said, security will remove you, and they aren't gentle, Lakota said, tears of pure rage shimmering in her eyes, though her voice remained steady. Do you remember, Marcus? Or was I just another piece of trash you took out that week? Lakota! Marcus gasped. He fell to his knees. His legs simply gave up. He stared up at the woman who had bought his debt, his company, and his life. You're dead. You died on the street. I checked. I tried to call. You didn't try very hard, Lakota said coldly, looking down at him. You were too busy buying Jessica a Porsche. But you're right about one thing. The Lakota you knew, the weak, naive girl who thought you were a god. She did die that night. She died in the gutter where you left her. She took a sip of wine, watching him grovel. But the Blackwood blood doesn't die easily, Marcus. I crawled, I survived, and I remembered. You're the heiress. Marcus's mind was fracturing. The billions, the hostile takeover, the microchip deal. It wasn't just business, it was an execution. Oh my God, Ellie, please. He crawled forward, reaching for the hem of her red dress, his face wet with tears of shock and terror. I didn't know. If I had known you were a Blackwood, I never would have— Stop! Lakota kicked his hand away, her face twisting in disgust. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You would have what? Loved me? Respected me? Only because of my money? That is exactly why you are here, on your knees. I have a son, Marcus blubbered, grasping at the last straw. If you are her, then Leo. Leo is my son. I have rights. I'm his father. Father! A deep, gravelly voice boomed from the shadows of the hallway. Marcus whipped his head around. Silas Blackwood stepped into the light, leaning on his silver wolf cane. The old man looked like a titan of judgment. A father protects, Silas growled. A father provides. You threw your bloodline into the cold. You are no father. You are a biological donor, and a poor one at that. Silas gestured to the door. And unfortunately for you, your parenting rights aren't the biggest of your problems tonight. The elevator doors slid open again, but this time it wasn't a butler. 4 agents in FBI windbreakers stepped into the penthouse. Behind them, looking pale and handcuffed, was Jessica. Jessica, Marcus whispered. She took a plea deal, Marcus, Lakota said, her voice devoid of pity. We offered her a choice: 15 years in prison for conspiracy to commit fraud, or immunity if she handed over the hard drives, proving you orchestrated the embezzlement. It took her less than 5 seconds to choose herself. Jessica wouldn't meet his eyes. She stared at the floor, defeated. Marcus Sterling, the lead agent announced, stepping forward. You are under arrest for securities fraud, grand larceny, money laundering, and tax evasion. Marcus scrambled up, backing away until he hit the cold glass of the window. No, you can't do this. I'm a CEO. I'm a powerful man. You own nothing, Lakota said, stepping closer until she was inches from his face. I own the company. I own the building. I own the debt. And now, the state owns your freedom. The agents grabbed him. As the cold steel cuffs locked around his wrists, a sound far louder than the thunder outside, Marcus broke. "Lakota! Please! Just for old time's sake! I loved you once! Doesn't that mean anything?" he screamed, spitting saliva as they dragged him toward the elevator. Lakota watched him, her expression unreadable. She waited until he was at the doors. "It meant everything to me, Marcus," she said softly. "That's why this had to happen." She turned her back on him. "Get him out of my house." The doors closed, severing the scream of a man who had lost everything. The aftermath. The silence that followed was heavy. The storm outside seemed to pause, as if the sky itself had been holding its breath. Silas Blackwood walked over to his granddaughter. He placed a heavy, weathered hand on her shoulder. "How does it feel?" he asked quietly. Lakota looked at her reflection in the dark window. She saw the jewels, the expensive dress, the power, but she also saw the shadow of the girl who had cried herself to sleep on a park bench. "It doesn't feel like happiness," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "It feels like closure, like closing a book that has been open for too long." "Good," Silas nodded. "Happiness is for children. Peace is for queens. You have earned your peace." "Mama?" The soft voice broke the tension. Lakota turned instantly, the mask of the Iron Heiress melting away. Standing in the doorway of the bedroom was a 3-year-old boy in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Leo." "Did the bad man go away?" Leo asked, clutching his teddy bear. Lakota walked across the room, ignoring the spilled wine, ignoring the billions of dollars represented in the room. She dropped to her knees and pulled her son into a fierce embrace. She buried her face in his soft curls, inhaling the scent of safety. "Yes, baby," she whispered, tears finally spilling over, not tears of grief, but of release. "The bad man is gone. He's never coming back." Leo patted her head. "It's okay, Mama. I'm here. I'll take care of you." Lakota laughed, a wet, choked sound. She pulled back and kissed his nose. "I know you will, my little lion, and I will take care of you. Forever." She stood up, lifting him easily into her arms. She walked to the window and looked out at the city one last time. The rain had stopped. The clouds were parting, revealing a stark, bright moon hanging over Manhattan. The nightmare was over. The game was won. And Lakota Sterling was gone. Long live Eleanor Blackwood. They say that living well is the best revenge, but let's be honest. Sometimes systematically dismantling your enemy's life piece by piece is a close second. Marcus Sterling spent his life valuing people based on their net worth, never realizing that the most valuable thing he ever had was the woman he betrayed. He sits in a cell today, with nothing but time to think about that rainy night. Meanwhile, Lakota proved that you don't need a knight in shining armor to save you. Sometimes, you just need to find the sword your mother left you and save yourself. She turned her trauma into an empire and raised a son who knows that true strength isn't about money, it's about loyalty. What a ride. Now I have a question for you guys. If you were in Lakota's shoes, would you have taken the high road and just moved on? Or was this total destruction exactly what Marcus deserved? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let's get a debate going. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm share these stories with more people. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a drama. We drop new stories every week. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and never let anyone tell you you're worthless.